When we look out into the world, into our 3D reality in this moment, we can see that there appears to be a lot of suffering, a lot of challenges for humanity. And it's a very sensitive issue. Everybody feels a particular way about it, whether they're engaged or not. It's really hard not to be aware of any of it. We each have a level of awareness about what is happening in this 3D world. And so this video is about how we can change the world. And of course, everything that I speak about is really focused on the change from within. Because in all of my experience, in all my years of living as a human here, I have not really seen anything change when we attempt to change it on the outside. So, for example, in the 1900s in Britain, there were these women who were suffragettes who were fighting for the right for women to vote. Seems reasonable. And the women did get the vote. But when we look at the situation for women, is there still inequality? Yes. Yeah, women can vote, but they've got a lot of harder deals going on now, right? There's still exploitation, sexual exploitation, just everywhere. There's oppression, there's still differences in pay levels. Women are now expected to go out and work and run a home. Not every woman, but that can still be a reality for many. There are more single parent families where women carry the burden. So yes, women got the vote. There were external things that happen in this external world, in this outer reality, that appeared to make some of the equality, shift. But the reality is it was just replaced with different inequality. And likewise with the civil rights in the US, fighting for racial equality. And there were some changes, right? But ultimately, rather that, I mean, it's been a while, right? For both of those, what is the level of change we've really seen? Is it just more, some of it still, there's still a lot of overt racism towards everybody, right? Not, there's just not one towards one race or another, or, there's just across the world, there is a lot, right? That people have within groups, right? So what was the real change? There was some change, right? But what do we really see as a kind of as a collective, as a community, as a world, as a planet? What was the real change? What really happened was there was just a shift from one type of inequality to another because nothing changed on the inside. Maybe some people changed a little on the inside, but across the collective, nothing really changed. What we did was we just moved some parts around, but nothing fundamentally changed within humanity because nothing changes from the outside because this reality, and we can only speak from our direct experience, right? And that's really where I'm speaking from my observations and from my own, messages that come through to me. But nothing changes on the outside because the outside is a reflection. The outside world is what we are projecting, what we are seeing, right, from our level of consciousness, our individual level of consciousness, and our collective level of consciousness. Because we are just one unified being, right? We are just one thing. And we are all arising, right, from this field of consciousness, right? This unified field of consciousness. And then we see the things play out in what looks like our external reality. And we perceive it from the lens of I'm a human in this experience, but you are all the humans. You are the ones in conflict. You're the ones who are the victims. You're the one who are the perpetrators. You are the one who are the observer. You're the one who doesn't know what's going on, completely out of the picture. You're every single aspect of all things. And so this is your arising. This isn't about others. That's why we need to change on the inside. And so a couple of my personal experiences, and one of them is that since I have had the experience of unity consciousness, since my ego, I've had that ego dissolution. And we all are experiencing it to one degree or another. But for me, what happened was everybody stopped suffering. Everybody stopped suffering. I can see that there's conflicts. I can see that people say that they're suffering. I can see that there's pain. I can see there are challenges. I can see there are some things that look like horrendous situations in the world. But what changed was I stopped suffering. I stopped suffering. It doesn't mean I don't have challenges. It doesn't mean I don't have what we consider problems and, things that I need to sort out that previously I would have suffered for. But now I don't suffer, right? Like I said, it's not that there aren't challenges. Of course there are, but there isn't suffering. It's not that there isn't pain. Yes, there's pain, but there's not suffering. So when I look out into the world, I see there's pain. I see there are challenges. I see there are things that don't look ideal in terms of, sources of happiness and joy and peace, right? I can see that. And, you know, it's not that I'm unable to see it or I pretend it's not there. I see it. But I don't feel the suffering because I don't suffer, right? And that might seem callous to somebody, but that's how we stop suffering. One person by another person, by the field changing, and all of us eventually will change uh, into this experience of not suffering, of not being in pain, of being in this experience that's actually much more joyful. There's actually much more cooperative. That's kinder, right? But the shift happens internally. So my reality now is entirely different. When I was holding consciousness of like a lot of anger, everybody was angry with me. And I felt the anger and I felt their anger. Maybe they weren't angry, maybe they were fine. But because I was feeling the anger, everything I looked at was laced with that frequency of anger. Even within personal relationships where I've had challenges in the past with people. How did those challenges become resolved? I would say like they were abducted. Like if I didn't know better, they were abducted and somebody took over their body. They came back as an entirely different person. Why? Because I became a different person. It's not that I didn't see behaviors, it's I dropped the expectation that this person behaves this way. I dropped the attachment to this person is in this role and I'm in that role and this is our conflict. I allowed that person to show up exactly as they were, even if they showed up in a way that was harmful for me, because I had enough discernment to know, well, then I won't stay in that situation. But I didn't try to change them. I didn't expect them to change. I didn't do anything other than entirely accept what the situation was and allow that part where I had made a judgment about them and how their behavior was wrong. And not to say that I'm advocating behavior that is unkind to anybody, but instead of saying you're wrong, I was, I didn't even say a word to them, but I entirely accepted that this is a part of reality. This is a part of creation. Sometimes people do things that feel harmful to others, including myself. This is not my ideal situation, but if you wish to be that, if you wish to express that way, if you wish that to be your reality, I'm not going to judge you. And that dropping of the judgment, right, that dropping of the judgment meant that I could fully integrate that part of reality back into myself, into my unified field. Because until we are unified, we can't see unification on the outside, right? We can't see a unified collective until we are entirely unified. If I'm still holding judgments, maybe I don't see the exact judgment play out in the collective, but I will see a version of it, right? I will still see a version of it. Just the way that the women who were originally oppressed and not allowed to vote, right? When they got the vote, nothing had really changed. People still expected women to be oppressed because otherwise we wouldn't see that, right? And obviously everybody has, their own definition of what oppression is. But just broadly speaking, nothing really changed because the consciousness didn't change. So we can't change the reflection. So if I have a mark on my face and I'm trying to rub it off of the mirror, I'm not going to be able to do that. I need to rub it off my own face. Likewise, the field of consciousness is the source, right? So we want to go into that field of consciousness. We want to go into that unity consciousness. We want to go into the emptiness where we're not the characters, we're not the reflection. And that's where we shift, right? But we use the character to become unified. We look at the reflection and we see what is in separation. I see, a lot of conflict here. So what part of me is in conflict there? Like if that bothers me, right? Because it may not bother you, and then it may not be for you to integrate. But if you see it and there's a contraction and you are judging that that's wrong, then you want to integrate it back in. And that can be difficult when we see things happen that we just can't abide by. Some real, what we would consider, real violations of humanity. How do we, in that situation, how do we say, you know what, I'm not going to judge that as wrong? It's very, very difficult, but that is the solution, right? That is actually the solution because trying to change anything on the outside will never give us a long-term success. We will just see that issue pop up in another way. It's just the same as when we have our own personal, imprints, right? Our patterns. When we keep drawing the same type of person to us and we resolve it by leaving a person, right? We still think it's wrong. We leave that person. And then we meet another one who's not exactly the same. It may not be the same type of relationship. But again, we meet that dynamic again and again and again until we might consider we heal it, right? And that healing simply means, right? And what forgiveness means is I'm not going to fragment it. I'm not going to keep judging it. I'm going to allow it to come back into me. I'm going to give it a homecoming. I'm going to accept it as part of reality, as part of creation. I don't like it. It's not my preference to like it, right? Because integration doesn't mean we like everything. It's not my preference to see, things that are not kind to other people. But if I maintain judgment, I will never see difference. And I have never in my life, in all of my, half a decade, oh, sorry, half a decade, half a century of living, I have never seen anything on the outside change by me trying to change it. Like I said, I can move the parts around, but it never truly changes. It's only integration. And so I want to offer a very simple solution to see real change in your life, just in your personal life. And then we can apply it to the collective. But first, before we can even think about that, we need to have our own unity consciousness. We need to come away from separation, understand that we're all the moving parts. That's how you move the parts, by recognizing I'm all of the parts. And so this simple formula is what I always abide by. And so it is, firstly, if I look out into the outer reality, right? If there's something that's bothering me, and I accept it, right? And ultimately, you can't accept or reject anything because it's right here or it's not. So it's just the perception we're changing. We're shifting it from a sense of I've got to push it out there, I've got to fragment it, and I'm going to receive it back in, right? And we can do that by looking out into the world and saying, well, this situation, it's a little bit, there's discomfort for me in this situation, right? It makes me feel like there's some charge here. So I'm going to be with my body and I'm going to be with that charge and I'm going to let that move through me. And then I'm going to allow that back in. Where is the judgment? Where is the judgment in my body? I'm going to be with that judgment because that judgment was just trying to keep us safe, right? Ultimately, it's trying to keep us safe. It's trying to say that looks like a dangerous thing. Let's keep it over there, right? And let's keep remembering it, right? That we have the charge in our body, right? The emotional, the sensation keeps arising. The memories keep coming up. We have that within us to keep reminding us that's a dangerous thing. The way that if we burn our hands on a stove, we want to remember, don't do that again. So we have the memory of that. We keep that memory alive. But we don't judge it, right? We don't say that's a bad stove, that's bad, heat's bad, right? We just recognize it. So it's okay to have a memory that something isn't your preference. But if I start judging the stove, always looking out for where is it, where am I going to get burned, where in places where I wouldn't ordinarily get burned, I'm going to get burnt again and again and again, or I'm going to get injured, or I'm going to have some experience of that, right? Because I'm calling that in, I'm keeping it over there to look at it and say, you're bad. I'm going to keep you at arm's length. And what is it trying to do? If I keep it at arm's length, it's trying to come back. It's trying to come back to me, right? Like we are unity, we are one thing. And so when we send something out, it boomerangs and wants to come back to source, right? We are source. So be with what's there, right? And then, right, in terms of separation, sorry, in terms of sensation, be with that, right? And that sensation is the separation. So be with what's there, allow it to move through. You don't want to feel overwhelmed by it, but you do want to be with it for as much as you can, without judgment, without labels, without stories, without meaning, just for that pure sensation, at that level of sensation, if you can. And if other things are there, be present with them and move out, ground yourself. If it feels overwhelming, come back and be with it if you can. Right? And that's what allows us to shift into acceptance. And when we have that acceptance, that's when we bring it back in, we integrate it, right? And we allow it to come in, the non-judgment. We don't have to do any special integration. There's no calling in. We can do that if we enjoy that type of process. But ultimately, we just, by dropping the judgment, it comes back in. It becomes integrated. Oh, that's just an expression of creation of consciousness. Because ultimately, everything is either ascending towards source, towards the oneness, or descending right away. And it's all just simply for experience to know what this reality is, who we are. We are reality. We are the formless wanting to know itself in form. So we don't want to be judging any aspect of self because we're just judging ourselves. Because you are that. Whatever it is you're judging, you're that too. Whatever it is you have a judgment about, you are that. And then once we are in that place, we can do two things. We can be very intentional and say, this is what I would like to experience. right? Once we've integrated it, whatever that thing is, we then say, well, this is the experience I'd like to have. We can be very intentional, very clear and direct with what we want to see because we're consciousness. So we can go into the zero state, right? Now that we are more integrated, we go into the zero state and we allow the version of reality that we want to see to emerge. Or we can just simply go into that emptiness. We can go into ourselves and let what wants to emerge emerge. We don't always have to know what it is. And even if we have some sense of knowing what it is, it's just the field is moving in that direction. And then we pick up a message, oh, this is what I want. So even if it's your desire, it's really the desire of the totality of the field that you're tuning into. But you can just allow it to move through you, right? Because your vibration changes when you integrate, when you become, unified, when you let all those fragmented parts come in. And that's when you see the world change. And I have to say, from my experience, I don't see a lot of the world in the way that other people are experiencing it. We might be talking about the same circumstance, but my experience of it is very, very different. I often see opportunity where other people see despair and collapse and failure. I say, oh, it looks like we're going to do this now. And they feel like, oh my God, what's happened? Like, not everybody, of course. Many people have, integrated a lot and they've also seen the world in a different way. But that is how we change it. We have to allow ourselves to be whole by not rejecting any aspect of self. Imagine, even just for yourself, your individual expression, right, in human form. Imagine when you reject parts of you, how you feel. When we were younger and we were shunned maybe for some of our behavior, some of our ways of being, our natural, authentic ways of being, and we had to hide them and then go into shadows and we're wearing these masks. How damaging is that for us? And that is what we're doing to the collective when we reject any part of us. Yeah, those things are not always, kind or supportive or loving to the other. And certainly we can say we want to move in a different direction, but until we integrate it, we know we will never will. You will never see that. And we have to remember that whatever you're seeing from your lens, you're seeing the entirety. You're the one who changes it, not your ego, but you as the field of consciousness will change, and that will come through your lens. So it's what you're seeing, right? And not to say all the responsibility is just on you, this one human. No. Remember, humans, we're just a reflection. We're the reflection as well. The outer world is the reflection as well. We are the reflection. We are the field of consciousness, just revealing itself, right? Revealing what it is, the light revealing itself, the primordial light revealing itself. We are the mirror image. So we don't try to change anything out here. We go into consciousness, we integrate all the parts, and then we allow what wants to now be mirrored to be mirrored. And so I'd love for you to share with me if you put this practice in place, if you go through these 3 steps: acceptance, integration, and then allowing the new unfoldment. I'd love to hear your experience of that and what comes into your world as a result. So send in much love, and we are one.